So today's subject is on the subject of healing. And for today, I'd like to obviously welcome everyone who's here in the audience today, and I would like to welcome our YouTube audience as well. When we think about healing, it's also important to think about the opposite of that, which is brokenness. Because brokenness is a theme that frequently comes up in the recovery community prior to the recovery being lived into. So brokenness, what do we think of when we think of the word broken? It's not a word or a feeling we particularly like, and it's not something that we really want in our lives. A broken down car, broken plates, a broken Nintendo, horrors, right? These things are worthless and sometimes not even worth the repair bill. But what do we do when we tend to have broken things that don't seem worth the value of repairing? We discard them, we throw them away. They have no value and therefore they are unusable. The problem is that this thinking has tended to filter into our perception of ourselves. Broken. I'm broken, therefore I'm worthless, I lack value or meaning or purpose, or insert another term of self-depreciation here. Feeling broken can hurt and take us to a place of isolation, woundedness, and pain. When an animal is injured, it tends to isolate, withdraw, with hopes that it will either take time to heal or no longer be a burden to the rest of its pack. When we fall into that same kind of thinking, that isolation and woundedness, and become like that wounded animal, we think things like, I don't want to be a burden, or even that kind of ego-driven response. It actually comes from a good place, but is not very healthy, and is often born out of that painful experiences, even trauma, where trust has been violated. Thoughts such as, I only need myself, or I'll never trust or love anyone again. When something is shattered into tiny pieces, those tiny pieces can become very difficult to pick up. Anyone ever shattered anything like glass and you have these little shards and you try and pick them up and you get cuts all over your fingers? Anyone relate to that? Yeah. It can leave a lot of woundedness on the people that are trying to help. And it kind of leads me to remembering that phrase that is quite popular regarding hurt people, and that is, hurt people, hurt people. What if though, when we think of brokenness, we remember that our being broken is not the end of our usefulness, but it's the beginning of something new? What if we remember that it is only in brokenness that we can begin to rebuild a new life, and maybe even a new identity? Take, for example, the Japanese art of kintsugi, loosely translated as golden repair. It reminds us that with some items such as plates or more commonly vases, the broken pieces can be repaired and rejoined together with an inlay of gold resin, which, acting like glue, bonds the broken pieces together. Now sure, the plate or vase is not the same as it was, but it's even more stunning in the acknowledgement of its flaws for all to see. But yet the flaws, filled in with gold, give this item a new life, a new sense of beauty, and its brokenness has given birth to something more stunning than the original version could ever have imagined. The art of kintsugi does more than simply repair the object. Instead of hiding its defects, it highlights, even celebrates those defects. It makes them visible for all to see. And as I said, to celebrate. So what does this mean for us? We obviously can't patch ourselves together with gold resin, no matter how fabulous that would make us look. But it's a reminder that brokenness does not mean worthlessness, and that great value can come from our experiences in that place of brokenness. Great value and even a deeper level of being willing to risk trusting. Because you know what? We have nothing left to lose. It can be so easy to fall into the animal behaviors of isolating and trying to tend to our own wounds without asking for help. Let's face it, that really is easy. But it keeps us separated and unable to see beyond our wounds, our pain, and our brokenness. On the other hand, it takes guts to really risk sharing, to be willing to share your experiences, hurts, even wrongdoings with another. From an adapted version of Psalm 51 in the Message translation, it reads, "Generous in love, God give grace, huge in mercy, wipe out my bad record, scrub away my guilt, soak out my defects in your laundry. I know how I've been. My wrongdoings are staring me down. You've seen it all, seen the full extent of my actions. You have all the facts before you. I've been out of step with you for a long time. What you're after is truth from the inside out. Enter my life, then conceive a new, true life. God, make a fresh start in me. Bring me back from grey exile. Put a fresh wind in my sails. Going through the motions doesn't please you. A flawless performance is nothing to you. I learned God worship when my pride was shattered. Heart-shattered lives ready for love don't for a moment escape God's notice." Per the writer, going through motions doesn't help. The guilt, shame, they don't help. What does help is that when the pride was shattered, the writer's heart-shattered life became ready for love and therefore healing. It was in the brokenness that this writer recognized they could reach out and ask for help. And in this case, the God of their understanding, who was reached out to, was then able to work with this writer because the writer risked trusting because they had nothing to lose. In the reading entitled Go Boldly, it talks about the power of risk-taking and that when we have nothing to lose and everything to gain, to begin to take the healthy risk of empowering ourselves to be vulnerable. Another comparison to animals. Our animal instincts tell us that vulnerability is a sign of weakness. It's a flaw. It's imperfect. But applying the belief to the analogy of the form of kintsugi to this, we become aware that it actually takes courage to speak our deepest truths, and those truths will change over time and as we heal. And then the flaws that we once saw as areas of failure are actually gifts of strength to not only help us relate to people who may have been in our situation before us, but will help us, as Psalm 51 says, of teaching rebels, that is, too many of us who have been hurt and wounded and broken by a system of religious, societal, or otherwise, any of these systems, that did not accept us for who we are and did not accept our imperfections and therefore left us in a place of rebelling against these things. When we learn that these systems may have their own brokenness and instead go to the very core of that system, whether that be God, government, community, nature, or even a deeper sense of self-awareness, we are then able to help others experience their own brokenness as a source of connection rather than isolation, and find the right people or beliefs that remind us of the power of mercy, of compassion, of grace. We learn that it takes guts to continue to love. Even if your heart may be broken again and again, that it takes more guts to choose to live in our brokenness and woundedness and to be willing to be open about that than it does to isolate and hide. It takes more guts to fill our lives with possibilities and courage than it does limitations and fears. When we make the choice to actually embrace living, then we can begin to recognize that our woundedness, our brokenness, is a part of that experience, and we can begin to embrace that part of ourselves rather than hate it or reject it. Rejecting it doesn't mean the woundedness or brokenness will go away. It'll just make it worse. So why not learn to embrace it in order to heal? What have you got to lose? So as we're learning that brokenness is not a bad word, but that it has some stigma attached to it, and that the stigma can be overcome when we meet others who have experienced similar brokenness, we can take the word broken and use it as a teachable word. It gives us direction on how to heal. Broken. Be real, objective, kind, empowered, and take notice. Be real, objective, kind, empowered, and take notice. So what does it mean to be real? Especially when we're in that space of feeling broken, it might be difficult for us to get honest with what we're feeling or allow those painful feelings to come to the surface. In the 5 stages of grief by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, the first stage is denial, shock, or numbness. As much as that's our body's natural response, how many people here have sought to numb out some form of brokenness, whether broken hopes, broken hearts, broken in our lives, through drinking or using substances? We don't want things to feel real, so we try to ignore it and hope it'll go away. But long story short, it doesn't. Be real. This isn't about faking it till you make it. Now, people have heard me say this before, but I'll say it again because I absolutely love this phrase. It's not about faking it till you make it. It's about facing it till you make it. Getting honest with others and about yourself. In step language, this is like steps 4 and 5, a fearless moral inventory, being able to look at those areas of brokenness and learn how to see them clearly and learn how to embrace them as a part of who you have been, without shaming yourself, without punishing yourself, for whatever shortcoming or failure you may feel that is. And that's another word for you, failure. Too many people see failure as a bad thing. But failure is about learning lessons. And there's a good acronym for it. And the acronym is Found Another Important Lesson Upon Reviewing Experience. If we can stop and see failures as learning experiences as what they are, then we're able to learn and grow, and then maybe put that little gold resin over that area of woundedness so that we can learn from it and move beyond it. Found another important lesson upon reviewing experience. So as a part of being real, we need to look at things objectively. Be real and objective. We need to look objectively at the areas of our life that we've been seeking to avoid, or those parts of ourselves where the behaviors or actions have continued to keep us stuck in the brokenness rather than healing from it. The reality is that brokenness can be an excellent teacher so long as we reframe our minds to think of it as such. You've probably seen that picture of a plant. It's one of my favorite pictures. The plant that's growing out of the crack in the cement. Now, that plant can only grow if the cement is broken. If the cement is packed solid, there's no way for that little life to escape and to come out of that concrete. It's only because of the broken cement letting the life-giving rain in and the sun in that it makes it possible for the new life to exist and to grow from that brokenness. If that cement wasn't broken, the new life would stay hidden and buried. And as the phrase says, the seed has to be completely destroyed in order to bring about new life. In order to bloom, even the seed must be broken. And so changing our thinking by looking objectively at the brokenness will also help us become more open rather than staying stuck in this place of shame. Be real and objective. And the next one is be kind. Yolanda Hadid said, "I'm convinced that probably everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle that you know nothing about. It's just one more reason to always try to be kind. As I said, hurt people hurt people." When we can begin to recognize that we all have some degree of brokenness, it can remind us that instead of seeking to hurt or retaliate, we can work on learning compassion for people, for the people who may be in that place of hurt. Well, we don't have to like their actions or even understand their actions, but we may need to recognize that their brokenness is what's lashing out, not their rational self. Hurt people hurt people. Being kind does not mean we have to accept the hurt or that we should not set boundaries, but it does land us on the side of compassion and not reacting to that hurt. When we are the one who is feeling hurt and wanting to lash out, remember to be kind. I guarantee you, no one has ever regretted being kind. Yet let's face it, many of us have regretted hurting someone with words or actions that we couldn't take back. And if we are kind and feel hurt because of some action, then we need to look at our motives of that kindness. Were we expecting something in return? If so, then our kindness was conditional. And this leads us to empowerment, empowering ourselves. When we're in broken space, as I've said, we may try to hide, we may not reach out, not speak our truth. Like being real, this is about remembering our need to claim our authority, not to minimize our brokenness, but to empower ourselves to search for the solution. We empower ourselves by seeking to speak our truth, and like that plant in the cement, to grow from the brokenness that has been presented to us in our life. And finally, we need to take notice. Just as the writer of Psalm 51 shared that God had taken notice of their broken state, so we also have to be willing to take notice of our own broken state and let others in. Let our source of guidance in and let the healing begin. Our brokenness is where our healing begins. One of the lyrics to a 10th Avenue North song reads, "When you come to where you're broken within, the light meets the dark." Just like kintsugi for the soul, as opposed to chicken soup for the soul, the floors are wiped away into beautiful new truths that can teach us if we're willing to be taught, that can help us grow if we're willing to experience growth. And that can bring us hope, even in the midst of the brokenness. So are you willing to take this challenge? Are you willing to be real, objective, kind, empowered, and take notice of each other and yourselves? I hope you choose to grow through the brokenness and towards healing. Amen.